Hello and welcome to the April 2025 monthly update. Now, I'm sure you've noticed something is a tad different. The camera angle is slightly different and the camera that I'm using is slightly different because my webcam that I normally use to do these monthly updates isn't working. And I didn't just want to do it audio because every single monthly update has had me here and you've been able to see me, so I didn't want to change that. So basically I'm pre-recording this one. So as I'm recording this, I think it's going to go up the same day I'm recording it, but it might go up tomorrow. I'm recording this on the 1st of May. It may go up today, it may go up tomorrow, I'm not sure. But basically, yeah, I'm having to pre-record this one because my webcam has stopped working. Like I said, I could just do it audio, but I don't like doing that because it just, you know. So yeah, this is the April 2025 monthly update. So, as usual. Oh, and by the way, in case if I run off suddenly, it's because I've heard the ice cream van coming. So that, but it might not happen. Anyway, so yeah, things that I've done this month. So the first thing that I've got listed here is the 21st birthday update, because of course it was my birthday on the 8th. And so I did a video showing off the things that I got. I got some records, I got some books. It's pretty good. That's the only thing I've done, you know, on the on this channel. I haven't actually done anything on the other channel, on any of the other. Beg your pardon. On any of the. On any of the. On any of the other channels. I was going to start the gaming videos again in May, but I'm not really in the mood to be playing any games right now, so I'm just gonna... obviously, I'm never going to stop playing games, but I will resume those videos when I'm in the mood. You're really annoying me. Can you, like, stop rattling? Kind of annoying. So yeah, the gaming videos will resume at some point, but not on the 5th of May like I originally promised. But, so that's everything I've done that's listed here. I've also done quite a few paintings this year. This month in April, I've only just started painting again. I did my last painting on the 1st of April 2024, and it was only on the 22nd of April this year that I've started painting again. So this is the first painting that I did this year, and my first painting in over a year at that time. It is called, what the hell is it called? Number 38. It's mostly scraped, like there's some drips, like you see these sort of blue drips here. There's a little bit of spray paint, like the sort of black that you can see occasionally, that's spray paint. But the majority of it is scraped, so I use various different kinds of paint, and then I use the palette knife to scrape them down the canvas, and that's what all this that you see is. And I also have started mixing different kind of things into the paint, so like if I want to water down a paint, instead of just adding water, I've started adding bleach and adding isopropyl alcohol and like window cleaner and stuff like that. Sorry, I didn't realise it was going to be changing in brightness like this, but anyway. So yeah, so that's that. I'm quite happy with this painting. I like it quite a bit. But yeah, so that's mostly scrapes and drips with no brushwork. From what I remember, I didn't use a paintbrush at any point during this painting. It's all drips and scrapes and spray paint. So that's number 38. That was painted on the 22nd. From the 23rd to the 24th, I painted number 39. Now this is very similar in that it has a lot of scrapes, like you can see the this sort of beige and this blue and this sort of purple and pink. Those are all scraped. But then there's a lot more drips. So the sort of pink down here was a drip, which I then turned into a scrape. And obviously the blues and pinks up here were drips. And also this has more paintbrush usage. So you can see these pink circles here were done with a paintbrush. and this sort of bit of gold kind of outlining this sort of crevice in the green. And all this green was done with a paintbrush as well, by the way. But this sort of gold outline here was also done with a paintbrush. So that one's that. I'm not as happy with this one as the previous one, but I quite like it still. These sort of shapes that you see here, like these squiggly lines here, and then these vertical lines here, those were already on the canvas, those weren't mine. Because it had like a print on it, and they'd added some, like, with a hot glue gun to make the print more three-dimensional, and that's what that was, so I didn't add those. And I don't really like them, but anyway. Then, on the 25th, I finished a painting that I started on the 1st of April the last year. Now, this painting, Blue Peaks 2, was the painting that made me stop painting for a year. Because, obviously, to get these sharp angles on the mountains here, I usually used tape. So I sellotaped them up, and then I took the sellotape off, it tore the paper, and I just got annoyed and just gave up, basically. And so that's why this was painted from the 1st of April last year to the 25th of April this year. But it's really only 2 days of painting. And so to get these sharp lines, instead of using tape, I just used tissue paper, and got the sharp edge of the tissue paper and lined it up, and then used spray paint to get that sharp angle. And that's what I'm going to do. If I do any more of these peak paintings, that's probably what I'm going to do to save ripping it. But yeah, so that is that. I'm not all that happy with that painting, but whatever. And then the next one, which was painted from the 26th to the 28th, this one is called Number 40. I really quite like this one. Now, this one is obviously a lot more geometric. You can see lots of different sort of rectangles and squares of various different colours, and you can see most of the dark colours, like the blacks and the dark browns, are confined to the lower half of the painting, and the upper half is mostly light colours, and that it's also less dense. The composition is less dense at the top. You can see there's very few open spaces in the lower half. Like this bit of purple here and this brown are probably the biggest continuous bits of one colour. Whereas of course up here you've got this big bit of pink in the middle and this big bit of orange up here and this purple here and purple there and sort of purple there. And so it's less dense up there, and I didn't really do that on purpose. I mean, I knew that I was doing it by the end, but it's just part of my philosophy, isn't the right word, but my idea of what makes paintings look good. Because if I open it up here, for me, paintings just work better. They feel more balanced when you have the darker colours and the more dense stuff going on at the bottom, and then more wide open spaces and brighter colours at the top. So if you look at that, in my opinion, obviously it's subjective, but in my opinion that looks quite natural. But if you flip it upside down, now it feels wrong. I mean, it's just as, because it's an abstract painting, it's just as correct as the other way, but it feels wrong. It feels top heavy because you've got all the dark colours and the denseness up here, and then you've got the more open composition and the lighter colours down here. And so for me at least, it doesn't really work. And same if you have it on its side like this, it just feels like this side is much heavier than this side. Like if you want to balance this, you won't be able to balance it on the centre there. Like the centre of mass is about, like you need to balance it there. So the centre of mass is about there. And that's why that feels the most right to me. And I didn't really do it on purpose. I was basically just, whenever I would apply a new colour and a new rectangle of paint, I was basically just trying to cover up something that I didn't like. So like if there was a bit of colour that was too prevalent, or there were a way two colours came together that I didn't like, I would use that to cover it up. And basically I would try to leave as many parts open where the colours interacted in a way that I liked. So like for example up here, you can see I really like how this happened. So you got this kind of dark purple and a slightly lighter sort of grey purple, and and stuff like that, but the way they sort of encounter each other in this area I really like. Same with this bit here and that bit, and the way this orange runs alongside the purple and the green there, I just really like that. And then down here we've got this bit here where this purple meets this sort of grey, and you can kind of see some purple and white peeking out from underneath, and I really like that, so I didn't want to cover that up. And I was just working like that all the way over the canvas. Like you can see there's this bit here where there's a tiny little bit of purple there next to all the pink, and then here where purple and then sort of pink and a bit of yellow there. And I just think they work very well together and I like it. But any moment that I didn't like how the colours worked or I found it boring, I would cover it up with another thing, and it just so happened that mainly... Oh no, that's a spoiler. That mainly happened on the bottom half of the painting compared to the top half of the painting. I also quite like this moment here where I bring this sort of... This is a gold dulled down with a lot of white, and it's the same colour as this. So basically this colour here is this gold pen with some white in it. This here is that same colour but with more white added, and then this bit here is that same colour as there, but just lightly brought the brush across the intersection between this black rectangle and this grey rectangle. And I just quite liked how that worked. So that is number 40. And then, as of now, my most recent painting, which I did in its entirety on the 29th, this is number 41. This is a much darker painting, obviously. It is a lot of drips and a lot of splattering. Interestingly enough, this is actually two canvases. So this top half here is one canvas, and then the bottom half is another canvas, and I stapled them together and used masking tape to connect them. And then I added these pieces of collage over the top, so you can see there's a piece of paper there, there's another piece of paper there, and then there's this very big piece of paper there. And those pieces of collage are the piece of paper that I always have a piece of paper when I'm painting, and I have it there for me to wipe the excess pen off my brush and like off the scraper of the palette knife. And basically once you've got enough pen on there, I then use it as a collage piece, and that's what I did there. So I've since started a new one, which isn't ready enough, it's not been painted on enough to be used as a piece of collage yet, but eventually it will be. But I really like this painting. The colours of it, the sort of darkness of it, is very much inspired by Francis Bacon, because I very recently rewatched for about the third time a really great documentary on YouTube. It's called Francis Bacon, A Tainted Talent, and it's by a YouTube channel called Blind Dweller, who in my opinion is one of the greatest art-related YouTube channels on the internet at the moment. And he just would use these very sort of, particularly in the 40s, he would use these very dark colours. And I just really like it, but obviously this is, he painted figuratively, or sort of surrealist figuration. This is obviously a completely abstract painting, but it's like, it's an abstract version of a Francis Bacon painting, in my opinion. But I also used some Jackson Pollock techniques. So of course I painted this upright. So obviously when Jackson Pollock painted, he usually painted flat on the ground, so when he'd make a splat, the splat would stay exactly where he put it. But I paint, well, not always, but more recently I've been painting with the canvas upright, because I really love drips. I love drips in paintings. And obviously you can see there's a lot of drips going on here, but a lot of these drips, like all this grey here, was a Jackson Pollock splatter. So I got the paintbrush and I splattered it, which if it was horizontal it would have stayed, you know, in his way, but because it was the canvas was upright, the paint then trickled down like this, and you get some of this black paint which came down, because I used black paint to sort of glue the pieces of collage down, so you can see these thick black outlines on the pieces of collage, because I used like very thick black paint just to gloop it on to stick it down, not underneath but just along the edges. Because I couldn't be bothered getting PVA glue out of a locker and then doing that, I thought I'll just use paint. And then up here we see the most interesting part of the painting, a technique that I started using a couple of paintings earlier. I started it on number 39, particularly with this pink down here I used it, because you see that's very thick, that pink paint. But it came into its own here, is because paint is obviously quite expensive, and I want to make my paint last as long as possible. And of course, if you want to do that, you water down the paint. But with these drip paintings, I didn't want these drips. These drips I wanted to be liquidy, and I wanted these to drip down as far as they could go. But I wanted these drips to be a lot thicker. And so what I did up here was, I got the colour that I wanted, this kind of blue, aqua blue kind of colour. And I then watered it down. I think I used isopropyl alcohol in that one. I probably shouldn't, because it probably makes no difference. It's probably more expensive. I probably should just use water, but whatever. I watered it down with something. And then I added ash into it to thicken it up again. And that seems to work really well. It moves the colour slightly towards grey. I know this looks really grey, but it was meant to be that colour, because I used a lot of this grey in that. So it was meant to be that colour. It very slightly dulls the colour when you do that. Basically, we have an open, like a kind of fire place in our house, and obviously you collect a lot of ash, and the ash we basically just put in like a pot, and so I get like a little cup and I scoop out some of the ash and I add it to the paint, and that thickens it up, and it makes the paint last a lot longer. But obviously there's a lot of stuff in there that it's not just ash. There's like solid bits in there, and now because I'm pre-recording this, what I can do is something very magical. I'm going to move the camera and take you to see the painting. Because this is one of the few paintings I've done recently that I've actually hung it up very recently. And so you can see it's here, this one. This is a painting called Witch. It's quite nice. But this one here, I'll just turn the lights on so you can see it a bit better. So, what's a good place to show you it? If we look here, you can see these are very thick sort of pieces of, they're kind of charcoal. And if you look here again, these are a charcoal, and that's charcoal. And you can see a lot of it up there. Because obviously this ash came out of the fireplace, so you can see a lot of that there. But also, because obviously it's a fireplace and we burn wood, and sometimes wood has nails in it, this painting also has nails in it. So you can see a nail there, and you can see some nails there, and you can see a nail there, a couple more nails there, and a nail up there. Some of them I placed myself, so that nail there I placed, and those nails there I placed. But that nail, those nails, and that nail just found their way into the painting on their own. Because the nails were in the ash. So I didn't choose to add nails into the painting. Or at least I didn't choose to add those nails. I didn't realise I was that zoomed in the whole time, sorry about that. I didn't choose to add those nails into the painting, it just sort of happened. So that is the paintings that I've done this month. That last one, this one, number 41 here, is my favourite painting that I've done so far this year. I know it's also so far this month, or in April, but obviously I've only just restarted painting in April, so this is so far my favourite painting I've done this year. I really, really like it. So that's paintings that I've done. Now, moving on to the books that I've read. I know I normally don't show this. I normally just have my face and I read this out to you, but for those of you who aren't familiar, this is a website called The Storygraph. And as you can see, I've logged since December of last year, I have been logging what books I've been reading and how many pages a day I've been reading. I've finished... Well, this one, I technically, as it says, I just finished it today, May the 1st, but because I'm recording this now, I might as well talk about it. I'm just going to talk about one book. So, I read this book, All the Myriad Ways. This cover is not the cover of the version I have. I have the very first edition. Well, I can get it. This is the version I have. This is the first paperback edition, published in June of 1971. This is the first edition. This is probably of the 3 Larry Niven short story collections, because I'm collecting every Larry Niven book, including novels and short story collections, and I'm getting the first edition of each, or the first paperback edition of each. The paperback is usually the first edition, so, first edition of each. All of his books so far are on Ballantine Books. I don't know when he left, I know not all of his books are, so I don't know when he stopped working with them, but this is on Ballantine Books, and you see the sort of ABBA logo there. They did it before ABBA. Ballantine Books did the reverse B before ABBA, but anyway. But yeah, this is, I think, the best one of those that I've read so far. There's a great story in it called Inconstant Moon. Which if I get there, called Inconstant Moon, which is probably my favourite short story of his I've ever read so far. It's very interesting. It's basically it's how 2 people spend what they think, whether it is or not, you'll find out if you read it, but what they think is going to be their last day alive. And it's really interesting. Basically, something has happened, whether it's a solar flare or a supernova from the sun. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you which one it actually is, but there's, that has happened, and they think that they only have a certain amount of time to live out the rest of their lives, and so it's basically them figuring out what to do with the rest of their lives, and it's probably his best story that I've read so far. There's a couple of set on Mars in the what was his other one called? The Shape of Space ones, which were also pretty good as well. But I think this is his best short story collection that I've read so far. So that's that, and I gave that a 3 out of 5. So there. I've also just started reading The Flying Sorcerers by Larry Niven and David Gerald, or however his name's pronounced, but obviously I haven't finished that, so we won't talk about that until next month. But the other one, which I've just finished today, so I didn't actually read this in April, I started it yesterday and I finished it today, Doctor Who and an Unearthly Child, as it says here, the first publication of the very first Doctor Who story. This is written by Terence Dicks. It's got this very cool metallic logo, as you can see there. This is the first edition, as that one's a 1971 obviously. This is 1981, but again a first edition Target novel. I'm trying to collect all the Target novels. I've only got like 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 Target novelizations and 3 Virgin books, which was Target as well, so they're kind of all Target. But yeah, I gave this a 3, which is pretty good when you consider that it's notoriously one of the worst Doctor Who stories. But because it's so short, it's only 128 pages, it's kind of impossible for it to outstay its welcome. I like these really thin, flimsy books. Like when I read Doctor Who and the Daleks, which was the very first Doctor Who book published, I thought there's no way this can be good, because it was so short. It wasn't quite as short as this, I think it was about 150 pages or something like that. And I thought there's no way it can be good. It's way too short for it to be good. But it was actually really, really great, because it's the kind of book... I could have read this in one day, but I chose to split it in half, so I read like the 60-something... well, I can literally just check. I read 62 pages on the first day, and then finished it today. And yeah, it's pretty good. I think I would probably say I enjoyed reading this more than I enjoy watching the actual story. I might say that, I don't know. Obviously the first episode of An Unearthly Child is required viewing for any Doctor Who fan. And I wouldn't say this is required reading, but I mean, there's a reason it took them nearly 20 years to finally novelise it, you know. Because when they did Doctor Who and the Daleks, they sort of started from there. So, like, that introduces the characters rather than this introducing the characters, and this story is completely skipped. And so, meaning if you read all the books in order, you're going to get confused, because this introduces the characters. This is almost word for word from the televised episode. The Dalek novel is completely different to the television version. Like, they introduced the characters for the first time in that story, where, of course, in TV it was the second story. And also there's characters in the book who aren't in the... And the plot moves in a very different way. This was less entertaining to read than the first Dalek book, because you know exactly what's going to happen. Like, it's not exactly word for word, but it's nearly word for the script of the original episode. So if you've seen the episode, you can pretty much call everything that happens in this. It just happens in a shorter period of time in this. It's a lot quicker than that story, than the television version. Whereas the Dalek story, like, it's a completely unique experience reading it, so I much prefer the Dalek to this, but I'm still very glad to have this, and it wasn't, I mean, like I said, I gave it a 3, so you know, about half and half, really. Well, I suppose 2.5, so anyway, yeah. So that is the 2 books that I've read this month, even though this one I only finished today, but whatever. So that's that. That's books I've read, that's paintings I've done. What's next? Things I've watched this month. Okay, so I have exclusively, at least, I've just been in an animation mood this month, so I've just pretty much everything listed here in the description is animated. I've watched some X-Files and some Doctor Who, of course, with my mum, like I always do, but obviously I only list things here that I watch like on my own for the first time here at this computer. So, although that's not true, because the final thing that I listed here is a VHS tape that I've had since I was a kid, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So, the first thing I watched this month, well, obviously I will have started with Season 9 of Friendship is Magic, but we'll get to that. I watched My Little Pony Rainbow Road Trip, 2019. This uses it's an hour-long special, and it uses the exact same animation style as the film, and it was animated by the same people who did the film. I really enjoyed this one, actually. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it more than the film, but I did quite enjoy it. There's a character in it, I can't remember his name, but he's like the... Oh my god, I have to look at the bloody credit. I can't remember his name, it's been too long. But basically, the kind of mayor of this town, he's probably my favourite character in this. It's a shame he's exclusive to this one special, because he's one of my favourite characters. But, yeah, I quite liked it. It was pretty good. Yeah. Again, I'm very bad with describing things, but I quite liked it. So, it was, yeah, pretty good. It was broadcast kind of in the middle of Season 9, and if you count it as part of Season 9, it's probably my favourite thing, but then again, it is an hour long, so it's kind of like 3 episodes. Then, I watched Moomins and the Winter Wonderland. Now, this has a complicated history. As you can see in the description there, it says 1977/2017, and that's because the animation that you're looking at when you watch it was done in 1977, or it's hard to find out, because it's a compilation of episodes from the 1977 to 1982 animated series, which was done with stop motion, like felt animation. Although there's a great deal of stuff in the film that is obviously more recently animated, and I think they may have extended, because obviously it will have been in in 4:3 when it was broadcast, so I don't know if they cropped it or expanded it somehow, because it doesn't look cropped. You can always tell when a 4:3 program's cropped and it always looks kind of crap. And this doesn't look like that, so I think they may have extended extended the sides of the frame digitally. I think that might be what they've done. And there's some piece of animation that are obviously new, like the intro is newly animated. And basically what they did is, there was a series, I think it was episodes like 23 to 33 or something like that, of the series adapted one of the Moomin books. Moomin Land in Midwinter or whatever it was. And they basically, what they did is, in 2017 they took those episodes, they compiled them together and recorded new dialogue with new voice actors. So it has Bill Skarsgård and Stellan Skarsgård and a few other people in it. And yeah, it was quite good. The animation was the best thing about it. Like a lot of the dialogues felt a bit clunky to me. Like the voice actors didn't really know what they were kind of meant to be doing. So that wasn't as good. But the animation is great. And I'm sure they cleaned it up digitally as well, because it will have been shot on film, but there's no film grain. So they've definitely cleaned it up. It doesn't look like they used AI to clean it up. It looks too good for that. AI usually really artificially smooths things out and makes things look crap. It's a very good restoration. So I couldn't tell you how they did it, but they did it very well. Then I watched something very special. This next film, it's one of those films that I always heard about but never watched. But it is, in less than a month having seen it, it's already become one of my favourite films. It's easily my favourite Disney film I've ever watched. And I just really love it. And I've started watching the TV series that it was based on as well, but we'll get to that in a minute. Or next month, I should say. If I finish it by next month, that is. I'm only like 12 episodes in, there's 80 episodes, so there's a good chance I won't have finished it by next month. But anyway, I watched a Goofy movie from 1995. This film is blooming good. It is basically about Goofy's son, Max, who I always knew about Max. It must have been from the Twice Upon a Christmas, the Mickey's Twice Upon a Christmas, because we have that on DVD. I don't remember anything about that. But it must be from that, because I know he's in that. So I always kind of knew that Goofy had a son, and it didn't originate in this, but this is kind of the most famous thing that Max was in. And I basically watched it, and it's really good. Like I said, it's one of my favourite films now. I mean, I wouldn't put it at The Clockwork Orange, but you know what I mean. It's not my favourite animated film either. My favourite Disney film, and one of my favourite animated films that I've ever watched. It's just really, really great. Because it's funny, but then it also has like a more emotional thing, which you don't get, especially from Disney. You usually don't get that. And a lot of the stuff I don't like about Disney stuff, like films that are the classics that I just don't have no interest in watching, like Snow White and Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast, is these sort of historical things. They're set like 100 or 200 or 1,000 years ago or whatever. And I just have no interest in watching stuff like that. The things I enjoy are, like, there are three things I enjoy. Science fiction, modern day stuff, that's not necessarily modern day to now, but modern day to whenever things was made. So this film was 1995. It's set, maybe not in 1995, but certainly adjacent to 1995, if not 1995. So science fiction, contemporary stuff, modern day stuff, stuff that's set when it's made, and comedy, because comedy can work historically. Comedy is a completely separate thing, but science fiction, modern day, and comedy. I don't like historical stuff. I don't like epics like Ben-Hur and Spartacus, which is the one Stanley Kubrick film that I haven't finished. I got halfway through and thought, and gave up on that. But luckily, it's not a proper Stanley Kubrick film, so I have watched every Stanley Kubrick film. Because he doesn't even include Fear and Desire, and that's 1,000 times better than Spartacus. But films like that, I just don't really like. Some westerns are okay, like the Dollars trilogy I quite like, but that's mainly just because Sergio Leone was such a great director, not that Stanley Kubrick wasn't, but you know what I mean. And even those, I haven't watched those in ages, and I can't imagine I'd enjoy them as much now as I did when I was like a kid. And you think, oh, Clint Eastwood's so cool the way he goes around shooting people. My morality has kind of shifted now. Shooting people isn't as cool as it used to be. So for that reason, I'm not really into historical stuff. A lot of Disney stuff, I just have no interest in whatsoever. I think the only other like classic Disney film that I've ever watched is The Lion King, and I never really enjoyed that either. But like when I was a kid, I think a kid at school really liked it, and he brought in the DVD to show us, and that's really like the only other Disney film I've watched, unless you count Star Wars, but Star Wars doesn't count. Like classic animated Disney films, Lion King and a Goofy movie, which were being produced around the same time. And a Goofy movie a quadrillion times better. So yeah, that's that. So many great characters. I think Bobby Zimmerowski, who I'm like 100% sure was named after Bob Dylan, because Robert Zimmerman, I'm like 99.9% sure that Bobby was named after Bob Dylan. And he has a tiny role in a Goofy movie. He has a much bigger role in an extremely Goofy movie, which is the sequel to a Goofy movie. It was released 5 years later in 2000. This is the strange thing about this. A Goofy movie it wasn't big budget by any means, but it was a proper production with a fairly big budget for an animated film, at least. Not as big as like Lion King, but for what it is, it had a fairly big budget. I mean, it was a film of a TV show, and those usually are given pennies, So it was quite a big budget. It was released theatrically in cinemas, and no one liked it. Like, pretty much the only reviews it got were negative, until the internet and people who grew up with it, and people who, like me, who didn't grow up with it, but I have very good standards, so I know how good it is. People like us go on the internet and talk about it. All the critics, like in newspapers, on television, Roger Ebert and assorted other useless individuals, had nothing but negative things to say about it. But an extremely Goofy movie, which was made for a tiny budget, released straight to DVD with no theatrical release at all, and the critics were a lot more positive towards it. So it's kind of strange that was the reaction that people had. Now, as far as the content of an extremely Goofy movie is concerned, I didn't enjoy it as much as a Goofy movie, but I still like it quite a lot. There are a lot of people who say it's absolute crap compared to the first film, and to be honest, a lot of films are absolute crap compared to a Goofy movie, because it's great. But I really liked it. Like I said, Bobby has a much bigger role in an extremely Goofy movie. Like, he's in, like 3 or 4 scenes in the first film. He's in pretty much every scene in this film, because he's part of the main trio of Max, PJ, who's Pete's son, who's also in them, by the way. Those, like, Max, PJ, and Bobby are like the Holy Trinity, and they're in the entirety of an extremely Goofy movie. And also the first film, and I'm going back and forth here, but the first film was also a musical, and I'm not normally into musicals unless they're kind of a parody of themselves, or they're like a comedic take on it, like the South Park movie, and Monty Python's Meaning of Life, and Lego Movie 2. Like, if they're like a comedic take on it, or they're a parody of themselves, I'm usually not into them. And of course, Goofy Movie is kind of a comedy. It's not a parody of musicals, but it is kind of, some of the songs are funny, but some of the songs are also really good. Like when it first started, and the very first song starts, and Max is walking down, like, they've been laughing as long as I can remember. That's not how it goes. They've been laughing since I was remember. I can't speak English. They've been laughing since I can remember. And he walks down the garden path towards the gate, and he starts singing, and the guitar starts going and you think, oh god, it's a musical, I hate these. But some of the songs in it are pretty good. That song... Pretty much all the songs in it I quite like. On the Open Road has a bit of Mickey in it, who is just the best. Because obviously I grew up with Mickey. I didn't really grow up with Goofy. The only things I saw Goofy in were things that he was in with Mickey. Like, when I was a kid, I would only watch stuff with Mickey. So, when I was a kid, that's probably why I never saw this. Like, if I was into Goofy, my parents probably would have got me, like, a DVD, or they'd have got a Goofy movie for me. But because it was Mickey who I was into, they didn't bother with the Goofy movie. So that's why I didn't grow up with it. But yeah, some of the songs in it are pretty good. The first one, which I think it's After Today, it's called, and then the first of the two Powerline ones, which everyone always goes on about, are really good as well. I think I probably prefer the Stand Out to the Eye to Eye, but Eye to Eye is also pretty good. I like all the songs in that film pretty much. And the best scene is the scene in the hot tub, which everyone knows about who's seen it, but yeah. An extremely goofy movie. It's not a musical in the same way the first one is. There are songs, but they're part of the soundtrack rather than being sung by the characters. So it's kind of the opposite of Camp Rock. Because Camp Rock has songs, but they're all sung by the characters. And then... No. It's not really anything like that, actually. Camp Rock is a musical, and all the songs are all sung by the characters, but they're sung in the universe of the film. Like, they don't turn to the camera and start singing. All the songs are part of the film, like, so they're like a band playing a song in the film or doing it like that. And then the second Camp Rock film it's like a regular musical. I mean, both those films are crap, but that's a completely different thing. Anyway, so an extremely goofy movie. It's the animation is... I don't want to go into the plots of any of these things, because I think you should just watch them. But an extremely goofy movie, the animation changed. So, with a Goofy movie, it was animated traditionally. I'm not sure. These details are kind of muddled. From what I understand... I don't understand. How I think they animated a Goofy movie is it was traditional animation, so it was hand-painted on cells in front of hand-painted backgrounds, and then they had like a digital camera pointing at that while they were doing it, and then that image was transferred to a digital screen, which then they used the film to take a picture of that. That doesn't sound like it makes sense, but the only reason I think that is because in the behind the scenes, there was this bit where they had a dead pixel, and you don't get a dead pixel with film. So, I know the end was they had a digital screen, and they used a film camera to take a picture of it. How they got the images onto the digital screen, I'm not sure. I don't think... It was 1995, so I'm sure it was not done digitally. It was hand-painted, but I don't know how they got the hand-painted image onto the digital screen, because it would seem kind of stupid to do that. Maybe it was to prevent anything going wrong, like if the film didn't develop, they wouldn't have to get all the cells back and all the backgrounds back and do it that way. I think that's probably what it was. Is a kind of safeguard against, like, the film develop... Because, of course, if they did it on film, if they got the background and they put the cells up and then took the film, and then the film didn't develop properly, or there was some mistake in it, they'd have to get the backgrounds back out, get the cells back out, unbox everything and put everything back and take it on film again. But if they do it digitally, if they take a digital picture of it, then they have that digital picture permanently. So I think that's probably how they did it, but I don't know. Now, an extremely goofy movie, I'm pretty sure was animated digitally. It looks a lot smoother, not in a positive sense, I don't think it looks as good as the original, but it's clearly, the movements are a lot more digital. It still looks to have been hand-drawn, but like on... I think I don't know if they had those in 2000. I think it was animated digitally. It looks digital to me. And the way the shadows and the light interacts is a lot more realistic than in the first film. And that seems to be the kind of thing you'd only be able to do digitally. You can't do, like, highlights and shadows and stuff like that easily with traditional animation. You can, but I don't think an extremely goofy movie... Well, I mean, I can just show you these clips, because... You know, so if you look here... If you look here, this is obviously hand-drawn animation, and is being drawn and then taken a picture of, you know. Whereas an extremely goofy movie, if you look at this doesn't look like it was done by hand to me. This looks digital. So, I mean, these are the kind of films where there isn't much talk about that, but if you look here, if you look at the way the highlights happen, like you look at Goofy here, and you see these highlights around like the front of his face, and PJ here, these highlights around their bodies just don't look like the kind of thing you could do with hand-drawn. So I think this was done digitally. Bobby here is the best character in the film, by the way, in either of the films. He had a haircut for this, and I preferred his hair in the first film, but anyway. And PJ here is... Oh, that's Goofy. Goofy, I love you, but get off screen. So, I think an extremely goofy movie was done digitally. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But it's the kind of film... I mean, it was a straight-to-DVD sequel to a theatrical film which already didn't do very well. So, naturally, there's very little information about how it was done. But I'm 99% sure that an extremely goofy movie was done digitally. But, again, please correct me if I'm wrong. Then, I finished, now of course I'd been watching this since about halfway through last month, but... Or halfway through March, I should say, because it's now May, as I'm recording this, and as you're seeing it. But anyway. Then I finished Season 9 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, meaning I've finished the show. Season 9 was, I think it was the strongest since Season 5. Season 5, without a shadow of a doubt, is the best season. But I think Season 9 is probably my favourite after that. There's a character in it called Cozy Glow, like this little girl pony, who is one of my favourite characters of the show. And she's only in like the last 2 seasons, but I really like her. And so she, like every scene she's in just is great. And I don't know about any individual episodes. I mean, let me see. What have we got? Yeah, none of these seem... None of these titles are jumping out to me. Yeah. So, like, none of the actual individual episodes titles jump out to me or anything like that, but I do remember enjoying it a lot. But yeah. So there. So that was that, and the show, I've really enjoyed watching the show. I've already replaced it, because it's the kind of show I watch while I'm eating breakfast. I've since replaced it with Goof Troop, which is the show that the Goofy movies were based on. Bobby and Roxanne. I mean, Roxanne isn't in an extremely goofy... Yeah, that's actually... I didn't talk about it, but that's one of the biggest problems with an extremely goofy movie, is Roxanne isn't in it. And she's one of the best characters from the first film. And she was invented for the first film, and so she isn't in Goof Troop. And Bobby was invented for a Goofy movie, so he isn't in Goof Troop either. But I'm still very much enjoying Goof Troop. But it's a lot more just classic Disney sort of slapstick comedy, but that, it's equally enjoyable. But yeah, so I'm enjoying that. That was in 1992, but we'll talk about that later when I finished it. Probably not next month, because there's like 80 episodes and I'm only like 15 episodes in or something. Anyway, then I watched something which only came out this year. I think it actually technically came out last year, but I've put it as this year, because whatever. A documentary about the making of a Goofy movie called Not Just a Goof. This is where I learned about the dead pixel, and where I learned about some other behind-the-scenes stuff. And it's a really great documentary for various reasons. One of which being it's the way it handles Jeffrey Katzenberg. Now, Jeffrey Katzenberg is quite a controversial figure in Disney terms. And this documentary treats him very fairly. It tells multiple sides of the argument. It shows the good things and bad things that he did. But the thing that annoys me about this is the way a lot of people who've watched the documentary seem to have not noticed any of the good things that Jeffrey Katzenberg did. Now, they point out all the bad things, like the mistakes that he made. But none of the good ideas that he had. Like, for example, they always talk about how he wanted to replace Bill Farmer, who's the official voice of Goofy, and was, I think he started in 1987, and he's still the voice of Goofy today. So when I grew up watching Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, Bill Farmer was Goofy. And he also does Pluto as well. But Jeffrey Katzenberg had an idea to replace him with Steve Martin. In other words, just to not have the Goofy voice as Goofy. And so to prove that that didn't really work, the filmmakers got Bill Farmer and had him record the lines just in his own voice. And when Jeffrey Katzenberg saw that, he agreed that it didn't work. And so they obviously went back to the normal Goofy voice. But the thing that kind of annoys me about people who talk about it is they mention that and how stupid of an idea it was. And it was a stupid idea. But they ignore the fact that immediately after he was proven wrong, he agreed that it was a bad idea and let them go ahead with it the normal way. And that's what kind of annoys me, the fact that they point out the flaw, but then don't point out the fact that he recognised the flaw, which is usually something, aren't we supposed to praise that, when someone recognises that they did something wrong? I mean, I thought that's a good thing, And so, there's that little thing. But then also, Jeffrey Katzenberg is actually responsible for, the main part of the film. Because about 90% of a Goofy movie is the road trip with Max and Goofy on this road trip. The road trip was Jeffrey Katzenberg's idea. Because he and his daughter, who weren't getting along very well, went on a road trip and it helped them get along better. And that was the idea for a Goofy movie. So, everyone who claims to be a fan of a Goofy movie, and they all have a go at Jeffrey Katzenberg, when if it wasn't for Jeffrey Katzenberg, you wouldn't have got a Goofy movie, or if you had, it would have been a completely different film. Because the original idea was to just have it be a goof troop movie, and it was just going to be more of the slapstick comedy and all that, and it was his idea to add the more emotional stuff, which is the reason the film is a classic, and it was also his idea to add the road trip, which is 90% of the film's plot. So that kind of annoys me, that people just sort of completely, they don't acknowledge any of the good ideas that he had. And that, I mean, there are some executives who would have forced their idea through to the final. A lot of executives would, they want Steve Martin for the film. All right, Bill Farmer, you're fired. And they get Steve Martin in and they do it whether or not the filmmakers want them to or not. But Jeffrey Katzenberg, he had an idea. The filmmakers proved that it was a bad idea, and then he agreed that it was a bad idea and let them do it properly. I mean, for me, that puts Jeffrey Katzenberg miles ahead of most other studio executives. I mean, you look at someone like Sid Sheinberg, who Terry Gilliam is doing Brazil. Sid Sheinberg steals Brazil from him, cuts it up, and makes all these changes, and only relents when Terry Gilliam goes public and gets the public on. There's all this public backlash. None of this stuff happened with the Goofy movie. Goofy movie didn't have public backlash because none of this stuff came out publicly. It wasn't a big enough film, and the filmmakers didn't go public with this betrayal, because it wasn't really a betrayal. Jeffrey Katzenberg agreed that his idea was bad of his own accord. He agreed that it wasn't a good idea. He didn't, backtrack because of some kind of backlash. That sentence works. He just agreed that it didn't work. And so I think as far as studio executive's concerned, he's pretty good, as far as I'm concerned. And so that was but that's not a problem with the documentary. The documentary shows both sides. People talk about him positive, they talk about the bad ideas, and they talk about the good ideas that he had. The documentary is really well balanced. I'm more talking about the people who watched the documentary who seem to have not actually been paying attention while watching it. But yeah, I really enjoyed the documentary. If you're a fan of a Goofy movie, I'd recommend you watch it because it's really great. And then the final film that I've watched, I've technically linked something else here, which it doesn't really make sense to list it here because I've seen it about 100 times since I was a kid, but, I do what I want, my rules. I watched a film called Wizards from 1977, another animated. Like I said, everything here is animated. Well, not just a Goof isn't animated. Parts of it are animated, actually, and not just clips from the film. Like, they had newly animated segments for it. But obviously there's a lot of live action in that, so that doesn't really... But anyway, Wizards is by Ralph Bakshi, who did Fritz the Cat. It's quite interesting in that it's kind of a science fiction and a fantasy thing. Like, it has magic and wizards and elves and fairies and stuff like that. But then it also has, like, laser guns and robots and space and stuff like that. So it kind of... Sorry, my throat's getting really sore from all this talking. I've been talking for 50 minutes. 57. To be precise. It's going to be slightly edited down for you, but only just. And so... Yeah, that's that. The animation, you can tell it was done on a really low budget, and they actually ran out of money during the animation. They had to finish it with rotoscoping, which occasionally works, but mostly just looks really sort of, wonky and doesn't really work. But yeah, it was alright. I don't know. I didn't find it as entertaining as Fritz the Cat. Mainly because it was trying to go for a slightly broader audience. It's not a kids' film by any means. There's nudity, there's a bit of language in it and violence. It's not a kids' film, but it was trying to go for a wider demographic than Fritz the Cat, which was specifically adults with a demented sense of humour. You and no one else. And I am an adult with a demented sense of humour, so that's why Fritz the Cat is more enjoyable to me than Wizards. But certainly there's a lot of good ideas in Wizards. I think the animation is better in Wizards than it is in Fritz the Cat, but it's been a while since I've seen Fritz the Cat. But anyway, it was the most significant thing about it is that it's Mark Hamill's first film. It came out just like a few months before Star Wars, the same year, obviously 77, and it was kind of in a way produced alongside Star Wars. I mean, it was 20th Century Fox. George Lucas and Ralph Bakshi kind of knew each other already, and it was... Originally the film was going to be called War Wizards, and George Lucas asked if they could change the title to Wizards so they wouldn't interfere with Star Wars. Because two films starring the same guy, coming out by the same studio, both with the words war in the title, they were a bit confusing. And I think Wizards is a better title for it than War Wizards, personally. So, there. But yeah, it was alright, but I definitely wouldn't recommend it unless you're like a big fan of Ralph Bakshi's stuff. But anyway, and then the final thing I watched is this. Mickey's Greatest Hits. This is a 1996 VHS that I grew up with. I've had this since I was a kid. Not this exact copy. My grandma sold this specific because it was at her house, and she sold it, so I had to go on eBay and buy a new one because it means that much to me. I mean, this is actually sealed. This VHS tape is sealed. I haven't even opened it. But this is 1996. I wanted to watch it again. I found a copy of it online. I didn't watch this specific copy because I don't have a VHS player, but I found a copy of it on the Internet Archive, and I watched that. including the advertisements, because the advertisements are a bit... I think the advertisements on the version I watched are slightly different than the version that I grew up with, because I didn't recognise all of them, but I'm not sure about it. But yeah, so there, that's that. I also wanted to find this one, because this is another tape I've had. This is another one that I had to buy again. This one's from 1996. This one, well, the original list came out in 1989, and I did find a copy of the 1989 version, but it's only half the length. That one only, I think that one had like 3 episodes. This has 6 episodes, and this is the 2003 reissue of it. And I couldn't find this version online, which was really annoying. So I haven't been able to watch this one, but still, these 2 tapes are a very big part of my childhood. So is the Lars one, which I will show you, because it's season 1 of Lars the Little Polar Bear. I always call it Lars the Polar Bear. It's called the Little Polar Bear. In fact, I have Lars here. I've talked about this before, but this is an actual Lars. This is not just a polar bear, which is called... I have it on good authority that this is Lars, not just a polar bear toy that they call Lars. It is a Lars toy. But yeah, so that's that. So yeah, that's things that I've watched this month. Now moving on to things I've listened to this month. So I've listened to 3 more Bee Gees albums. Their very first album, the Bee Gees sing and play 14 Barry Gibb songs. The second, Spicks and Specks, from 1966. And their third and fourth I'd already heard, Bee Gees first and Horizontal. And so I listened to their next album, which is their 5th album, Idea, from 1968. Idea is, I think, my favourite of their 60s stuff, but Horizontal, they're kind of neck and neck. I'll need to listen to them a few more times to really get that. But their first album in particular, I liked a lot more than I thought I would. I don't know why, it's just I really liked a lot of the stuff, and I've only listened to it once, and I don't like it enough to go back to it immediately, but eventually I will. But Idea definitely is the best of that. I mean, what songs are on there? I mean, I know it has I Started a Joke, which is one of my favourite Bee Gees songs, but it also has Kitty Can, which I like. Indian Gin and Whiskey Dry. Such a Shame, which isn't on the American version, and I've Got to Get a Message to You, which isn't on the British version. They're both in this playlist. And the title track, Idea. But I Started a Joke. I mean, it might just be because I've already heard it, but I think that's my favourite on the album. But then, I listened to 3 albums here, which I got for my birthday, and I got them on vinyl. So, these 3 albums, I did not listen to the versions that I have linked here. I listened to them... So making these 3 albums the very first albums that I'd ever listened to for the very first time on vinyl, rather than listen to it digitally like I normally do. So the first one, and absolutely the best gift that I got on my birthday, was Neil's Heavy Concept album by Nigel Planer, who obviously played Neil in The Young Ones, which is my favourite sitcom, my favourite television show of all time, really. Or maybe not, because Doctor Who does exist, doesn't it? But my favourite comedy, definitely. Has the song Hole in My Shoe, which is the most famous song off it, but it has lots of other songs that I really quite like. My White Bicycle, The Gnome, which is a cover of a Pink Floyd album, Golf Girl, Hurdy-Gurdy Man. I just liked those ones. All the ones that are like actual songs, because obviously there are comedy sketches and stuff, because he was a comedian, so it's a comedy album. And there are lots of sketches and stuff, and I like them, but the songs are actually really good. I mean, they're very 80s, and they've got like lots of synthesizers, but they're genuinely better songs than a lot of other 80s music, so I like that album. Then I listened to Hall & Oates, Beauty on a Backstreet. So I got the Neil's Heavy Concept, and I got that from my dad. That was a present from my dad. These next two were presents from someone else. The first one is Beauty on a Backstreet by Daryl Hall and John Oates, or Hall & Oates as I refer to them, from 1977. My very first time listening to a full-length Hall & Oates album. I liked a few of their songs, so I was quite happy to listen to it, and I really enjoyed quite a lot of the songs on it. Particularly the two songs, You Must Be Good for Something, which is my absolute favourite on the album, and Bad Habits and Infections. I liked both of those particularly. Very interestingly, they're both very Oingo Boingo-ish to me. I don't know why. But they both give off Oingo Boingo vibes to me. And obviously Oingo Boingo wasn't a band yet, so that's quite interesting. But yeah, I like those two songs. So if I had to recommend one song from that album, it'd be You Must Be Good for Something. And then another one of the albums that was given to me by the same guy who gave me the Hall & Oates album, The Human League Crash from 1986. I really, really hated this album. Hate is a strong word, but very much disliked. Late 80s kind of pop stuff, just really not my taste. Really repetitive. No melodies that are remotely catchy. No bass lines that are really good. Basically just like literally every song sounds the same. I cannot remember a single song from it. Not a single song stood out to me. And I really didn't like it. So yeah. So yeah, I just, maybe it's not their best album, I don't know, but I just really didn't like it. So yeah, that is all of that. So plans for next month, I should have done this earlier, but I had forgot. Plans for next month, I'm going to do more paintings. I'm going to read more. It's been very nice today and yesterday and the day before, so I've been sat out in the garden for a lot of it, so that gives me a lot of opportunities for reading. I mean, I can read obviously whenever I want, but it's much easier to when you're sat out nice in the garden, you can read for a bit, and I like that. And so there's that. I may do some more gaming videos. I'm not going to be doing it. I planned to do some live streams, even if I wasn't going to do any gaming videos in May. I was planning to do live streams, but because my webcam has stopped working. Basically, why it stopped working is because my computer is so crap that, like, it was being plugged in for ages, and I unplugged it to plug something else in just to test, like, the USB docking ports, and I plugged it back in and it stopped working, and I've had Windows analyze it and do all that, and it just, it's just really annoying. So I'm gonna try getting, I mean, I've been planning on upgrading that camera anyway, because it's in 1080p, but it's not a very good 1080p, it's a very grainy, noisy 1080p, so I'm going to try and get a nicer webcam, like a nicer USB webcam for the live streams, because I've been planning on getting a nicer one anyway, and considering that one has just stopped working, it would make sense to try and get a nice one. I haven't bought one yet, but I need to research, see what good ones are, like a 4K USB webcam. I don't even know if that's technologically possible, but I'll figure something out, I'm sure of it. But yeah, so I'm gonna get that, and then if that doesn't work, I'm gonna have to get a new computer, because this one, it's not ancient, but it is from I got it in 2018, which is, as far as computers are concerned, that's a pretty old computer. I really don't want to update it, because if I get a new computer, I'm going to have to use update to Windows 11. I really don't want to. I updated it for a bit. When Windows 11 came out, I thought, well, I didn't like Windows 10 when I first updated to it, but I had to. And now I'm very comfortable with it. I'll probably be comfortable with Windows 11, so I updated. and immediately hated everything and reverted back to Windows 10. But I don't know if you can, on a new computer, request Windows 10 be the main operating system. I think now that Windows 11 is the main one, it will be that automatically, and I don't think you can... I think you can revert to Windows 10 if you've been on Windows 10, you move to Windows 11, you can move back. But I don't think if you start with Windows 11, I don't think you can move back. And I really don't want to go on Windows 11, I just want to stay with Windows 10. But they're making things break, like there are folders that don't work anymore, and the computer no longer recognises my phone, so I can't put albums on it, and now my webcam has stopped working, and they're obviously just breaking stuff to try and get me to update, and it's really annoying. So yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm going to, first tries, I'm going to try and get a better webcam, and see if that works, and if that doesn't work, I'm probably just going to have to get a new computer, which is a shame, because I mean, it's really expensive. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's very, very expensive to get a computer. I mean, I don't know how expensive this one was, but I think it was like £400 or something, like £300, £400. So, I mean, I do have that much money, but I'd rather spend it on other things, or like save it, than spend it on a new computer when I have one which, although there's a lot of problems with it, works perfectly fine, you know? But anyway, that's that. Recap. If you can only consume one thing I've done, I've literally only done that one thing, and it's not even really a piece of content, it's just the birthday update. But obviously I've done those paintings, so you can go and have a look at them if you want. If you can only watch the one thing I've watched, without a shadow of a doubt, the best thing I've watched this month is a Goofy movie. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. It's the best Disney film ever made. So, a Goofy movie, 1995. Go and watch it now. And from that website that I have linked there, you can download it as well. So, because a lot of the websites I link to films on, you can't download them. You just have to watch them. And then if you want to record it, you have to like do a screen recording, which is really difficult. Like whenever I want to show a film to my parents, I have to play it on the computer and record it with OBS, which is what I'm using to... Well, I'm not using it to record it, but that's... You're seeing this through OBS. I'm using it to live stream this video. But yeah, so you can download it from the same website. So there, a Goofy movie. And then if you can only listen to one album that I've listened to, if you want a more musical thing, I'd recommend the Bee Gees' Idea, but if you want a more comedic thing, I'd recommend Neil's Heavy Concept album. And overall, yeah, I'd recommend the Heavy Concept album. So, there. I don't think there's anything else I need to say. The only thing I can have to say is sort of, apologies that I couldn't do this as a proper live stream. So if someone's watching, like if Digby, if you're here watching this in the chat, or anyone else watching this in the chat, and you're putting questions, I will try to be there while it's live streaming so I can answer any questions, but I can't guarantee that I'll get right back to you, because obviously I've been recording for an hour now, so this is going to be probably an hour long live stream. So yeah, I might not be sat here the whole time, so it might take me like 5 minutes or something to get back to your question. But yeah, so that, basically that's that. Yeah, so that's all for this time. I hope you've had a good April, I hope you have a good May, and I'll see you in the next thing that I do. Goodbye.